Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am now a Neko. But, in all seriousness, before I start getting controversy, people accusing me of being a homosexual furry, let us get to what this hangout is about. I'm trying to do my best to keep my sense of humor, even though there are some stitches in parts of my mouth. I'm recovering nicely from having my wisdom teeth being pulled. Um, each day I feel better, and I really do appreciate the prayers and thoughts that I got over the weekend.
Science has succeeded.
Indeed, science has succeeded. Thank God for it. Now, before we get into that debate, let us just we're just gonna have a discussion, have a little, chill accent party. Come debate religion. Come talk friendly stuff. Whatever you want to do. Then at some point, I'm probably gonna get back to my schedule of making videos to on certain aspects of religion, as well as making hangouts to get debates going. So until then, we have Redline. We have Gary. Gary we haven't seen in a long time for these hangouts. We have Wolf King. Yeah, and I think I feel your pain a bit, Gary, when it comes to the teeth.
Well,
Um, and then we
that,
got Jack. Then we got the Wolf King, who has been hated by Matt Slick for his profile picture several times. Then we have Alexia. Apparently, Alexia is no longer a puppy, is no longer a wolf. Apparently, she is now a raptor Jesus. Isn't that right, Alexia?
Yes, the rapture is
Yep,
coming.
yep, the rapture is coming. And then we have a new person. So, newbie. How do you say your name again?
It's pronounced Anase Skyrider.
Uh, okay,
And
Anex.
thanks for having me on.
Anase, I am your father.
Alright, Anase, thank you for being on
No.
here. Alright, so already we're acting like we're drunk as if we're Nephilim free on a Saturday night. So let us just get to a conversation started, starting with, well, Anase, what do you want to talk about?
Well, I was having an interesting conversation earlier with some other guys on Facebook, on a Facebook group. It's about arguing like retards about politics and crap, and also I was arguing with them, I guess, about circumcision, but mainly abortion. There's something pretty hot topic if you want to throw that in there.
oh, let's
I
go
have
ahead and
100%
start off with
permission.
abortion, shall we?
Yeah, that's
I'm
interesting
for
that you brought
circumcision
that up. That's interesting that you brought
myself.
that up, because one of the members on my ministry and an apologist on here named Max Hangs Out, otherwise known as Maximus Confesses. Whoa, what the heck was that?
That was my brother being retarded in the background.
He's
Ah,
I
a
am not
furry.
in my own private room.
He is
You
a
should
furry.
you should totally utilize that mute button.
mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll go ahead and mute myself.
It's
Continue.
cool. But yeah, I mean, he did an article on one of his blog posts where he mixed comic book or superheroes with uh, the idea of abortion in a philosophical. He gave like six different universes and premises of what to do, and then he provides the objections and the responses to said objections. And otherwise, I found it pretty interesting. I mean, the scenario was that you were Robin, then you grow up to become Dick Grayson as the Nightwing, and then something along the lines of then the Joker comes in and finds a way to kill Batman or something like that. But the situations change depending on universe. Let me see. Okay, you're Nightwing. You're also for a woman's right to choose. You discover that the Joker knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne and plans to kill him through stabbing him in his sleep. So, given that you can prevent this, do you have a moral obligation? That's Universe 1. Now, in Universe 2, same situation except that the Joker knows that Batman is actually Bruce Wayne. So, rather than stabbing him in his sleep, he chooses to go back in time and kill Martha Wayne, who is the mother. So, given that you could prevent this, do you have a moral obligation? Now, like in Universe 2, same situation except you discover that the Joker now knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne, he chooses to go back in time to convince Martha to have an abortion. Now, given that you can prevent this, do you have a moral obligation? So that's 3 universes so far. Number 4, the difference is that you discovered the Joker thinks that Batman is someone by the name of John Shelley, who is an engineer at Gotham Tech. Joker goes back in time to convince John's mother to have an abortion. Given that you know the situation and you can prevent this, do you have a moral obligation? Universe 5 is that the Joker thinks he's discovered Batman's identity, but when you see the Joker trying to talk to a random woman into an abortion, you see he is mistaken. Given that you can prevent this, do you have moral obligation? And then the last universe, finally I can stop talking, is everything that you are Nightwing, and all that. But this is where everything changes. You are also pro-life now. You wish to prevent abortion because you believe that no person should arbitrate between which human being becomes life. And the problem that he states in his blog is that we know, quote, we now come to the question induced by these universes. What moral principle is there that pro-choice Nightwings can provide that avoids any pro-life obligations that is also consistent with the moral duties that they could need to accomplish their moral imperatives in their respective universes?
We could definitely have had a conversation about abortion without ruining my childhood in the process. I just want to make you very aware of that.
Well,
I
that was
don't.
part of my job.
Yeah,
I,
yes, thank you.
I was expecting the end of this to go somewhere else, so when you start getting to the last part regarding like what were the options from a
Mhm.
pro-life position or something,
Yeah.
that was a little bit, I was a little thrown off.
Yeah, I mean,
And so
I
I
was
was
thrown off
just
as well
building
when I read it.
thoughts on something else entirely, so now I'm not quite sure where to go here. Can we
For
kind of
me,
backtrack? What is the response we're supposed like? What kind of response is being looked for here?
well, I don't know necessarily I left the link in the side chat for some of those that want to check it out.
I
think-
I was just pointing at the article to.
I think it's that in every single there's so many ways that you can frame it in which that any normal person would say, of course we should stop this, and
Right.
then some of those people that say, of course we should stop this, are for abortion, and so it's to promote a internal contradiction within the people that hold that position. That's what I got out of it.
Well, thankfully, then I know a way to deal with this without really holding any contradiction. The first thing I would say is that I don't believe there are really any moral obligations in this sense. It is a very morally good thing to do to stop the Joker. It is a very it is a very good thing to do to stop him. However, no one is necessarily obligated. In other words, every time you do something good, it is of your own choice, and that's good. You're not being forced to. You should do it because it's good, not because you have to. And the next point I'd make is that in all these cases, unless Martha Wayne was forced, she wanted to have the kid. So it's not like you're forcing her to have the kid if you were to stop the Joker. You're just changing her mind, and it does so either way it wouldn't really matter. I'd argue, of course, based on the information given, we know that in these universes these people exist, their parents are okay having their kids and whatnot, and they grow up to do amazing good things, that yes indeed it would be bad, or it would be good to stop the Joker from preventing their life by going back in time and having them get aborted.
Right. I think
Because the way I see it is, it's about the woman's choice and her autonomy. So if in these cases, the frickin' Dick Grayson's parents, I don't know their names, and Martha Wayne, they wanted to have the kids, as far as I know. So, stopping the Joker would be a good thing, especially because it ensures that they get born and they turn into superheroes who save so many lives. But of course, in the real world, we don't have access to this knowledge. We can't look at like averages of overall good and evil, so we make decisions based on the here and now, because that's really all we have. And so in the here and now, if you really don't want to have a kid, or it looks like according to medical science, so on and so forth, the kid is going to be born with like freaking crippled body, won't even live like a year, might as well just abort, so that way you can have a new healthy child who can be productive to society and do good things and so on and so forth. we make information based in the present. We have no idea that, I don't know, 5 years from now the kid is actually still alive and medical science cures the kid.
Hmm.
So it's all
It
the
can go many
situations don't
ways.
quite apply to real life
Right.
because in the
I mean,
example we have the
I
future.
understand. Even though the situations may not apply to real life, I still understand the point. And I've always tried to stay away of, really being vocal on my opinion on it, although it's pretty well known, I would imagine.
Right.
I am, for not having abortions. I mean, oh wow, the atheist is saying he's pro-life. No, not at all. I still think
Mhm.
a woman has the right to choose and stuff like that.
Just that they should try
However,
to kind of avoid that.
oh, not only should they avoid it, but we should be actively investing in education as to prevent that. Because when you're popularizing, I can't even speak, a show like 16 and frickin' Pregnant, next thing you know, every frickin' 16-year-old is having babies.
Yeah, and I think.
We should be investing in education so that we can actually prevent that. That way, we're not having this conversation. We can just talk about why Christian anarchist is a furry.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a fun
That, that, al-
conversation.
that
But
almost is just.
I have a thought to throw into this, and it's that I sort of understand where people like you are coming from, in that all about prevention. But when I try to think about it, I honestly find it kind of difficult, I guess you could say, to care that strongly. I care at least a little bit, that strongly about the early stages of a fetus. That is to say, I don't see a large difference other than the actions required in order to prevent the future development of the fetus into a child and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
I don't see a large difference between like the early stages of the fetus and just not getting pregnant at all through contraception. I mean, it is
Mhm.
more practical because you don't have to go to the doctor, and you don't have to pay for the well, not really surgery, but you don't have to pay for all the medical crap. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I don't see a large difference. I'm not, of course, saying that I don't care about children and stuff. It's just based on the circumstances. I just kind of find it difficult to see that large of a difference where it really matters, because the way I the way I see it in the early stages of the development, I mean, I don't want to quite frame it exactly like this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it in a kind of loose manner. It's basically a not an unsentient glob of developing a multicellular organism. It doesn't really mean anything, because the only reason we have morality in the first place is because it regards people, not just things with a unique genome, which is what some people were kind of arguing about, is that the fact that the fetus has a unique genome is somehow relevant. I care more about whether or not it's a person that thinks and feels. If the fetus, for example, experiences extreme pain during the abortion process, I would be a lot more against it in the later terms, for example. I don't know
Okay,
how
so
far
wait.
I would feel about
Hey,
that.
I have to ask.
Okay.
Would you be against G-Man being aborted?
That is an interesting question.
There's a moral conundrum right there.
Yeah, moral conundrum.
Well, it would stop someone's safe from getting stolen.
Mhm.
So
I haven't been exactly following up with the whole
it's the
G-Man
Hitler
thing.
scenario.
You
Oh well,
mostly,
what if the person you tried to abort was Elon, the next Elon Musk, and he did amazing thing? Well, what if the person I actually aborted actually turned out to be Hitler?
Oh yeah, and that was another philosophical point I thought you were going to go with, or that the blog that you were reading with was going to go with. I thought that's where you were going to go with, is just because, oh, they could turn out to be the next Batman or Nightwing, so you shouldn't
What if
abort or
Joker
whatever.
was the one who was going to be aborted?
Mhm.
We would
If Joker
I
was going to
mean,
be
get
aborted, I
asked.
might be okay with that.
We would
hold on a
never
second,
get asked the
Can we
question.
add, could we add the contingency? Could we add the like the stipulation that he has the potential to become Joker, like this is like free Joker, right?
Basically, he has the capability or the possibility of being the next Joker, and then we're never going to get asked the question, would you like to know how I got these scars?
I'd like to actually jump in real quick.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Personally speaking, as in regards to Hitler, yeah, he did many terrible things.
Mhm.
But you have to realize all the good things that actually came out of the Holocaust. Yeah, there were bad things, but there were many medical and technological advances that came out of the Holocaust. and
Right.
preventing Hitler from being born would have either prevented or delayed those advances and not saved as many lives.
That's
Now, while it's
entirely
And
bad,
possible.
I think this is
now,
where the issue
You
of
got
abortion.
you have
but
give and take.
You have an
but
interesting moral conundrum here. It's good.
Basically, the point is you don't know what that child is going to grow up to be, and so you really can't ponder that. You have to ponder on the here and now. Okay,
no,
I'm pregnant right now. What do I have to do? Can I actually take care of this kid? If
no.
this kid do I have any medical complications that's going to make the child unfit for life? Like, for example, if he's born without a brain, then there's no reason.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, knowing what Hitler did, knowing full well what he is going to do and that he's going to be born and he will do that, it actually, realistically, would be more immoral to prevent his birth than to allow him to be born.
If we're
Because
looking
of
at like all kinds of averages here of the greater good, then
no,
probably.
if you're looking at the overall story of what actually came out of it, we would be worse off as a society had that never happened.
Very
Well,
interesting.
that
I don't know if
like,
that's true, but that sounds
yeah,
possible. Wars
that's
do
what I'm
bring
saying. You
wars
see,
and military advancements bring a lot for the consumers and the general people.
you see, before the whole Hitler thing came about, the Americans and Russians still kind of hated each other, and it wasn't until the concept of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, came about with the Nazis that all of a sudden we start banding together. But then we went right back to kind of causing a conflict. So a conflict would have still been there for us to like make advances in aerospace. Like, for example, that's the only reason the moon race was happening, was because it was a gigantic dick measuring contest between us and the Russians.
Yeah.
So that would have kept going regardless of Hitler. In fact, it probably would have got there a lot sooner because we were busy with World War II.
Yeah.
And even then, we still had satellites orbit since 1957. As far as the medical advances, because of the atrocities being done to the Jews and using them as practical guinea pigs, we could have used actual guinea pigs.
Hmm.
Keep in mind, most of the so-called guinea pigs were not really guinea pigs; they were merely gassed, and their bodies were thrown into a furnace to get turned into ash. So when you think about the medical advances would have saved thousands of people. But keep in mind, we got to make up for the 6 million people during the Holocaust. We have to make up for all the people we bombed to crap and back in Japan. We would also have to keep in mind all the people that died in Italy during Mussolini's little mess up over there. And we would also have to take into account the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which caused a great deal of loss of life. So you have all of it at once rather than spread out over hundreds and hundreds of years. I say having people expire, which is a nice way of putting it, over hundreds and hundreds of years, having it spread out would be less of a travesty than having just a complete loss of life all at the same time, because what you have there is a terrorist attack.
Right. It's sort of interesting the way a lot of people look at this. Sorry to pull up this crap, but Vsauce had a video some time ago. It mentioned something about how people are to more impactful, dangerous events are averted more strongly than the slow, subtle killers. That is to say, take the amount of people who die from lung cancer due to smoking, the amount of people per year, to now make cancers completely safe, except one of them out of however many people who smoke, one of them explodes. Like, we would be more up in arms, even though the amount of deaths per year would be the same. I don't know the actual numbers.
Imagine Jack the
Yeah.
Ripper. Let's say Jack the Ripper was an immortal. Of course he's
Okay.
not. But let's say Jack the Ripper was immortal. Now let's say he stabbed one person every single day to death. Everyone would be losing their crap over that. But now let's say that him being an immortal, that Jack the Ripper killed just as many people. Let's say he had a goal. It was 1,000 people. So I want to kill 1,000 people, and for every day, for 1,000 days straight, he stabbed someone to death. Everyone would be going ape over it. Now let's imagine he spread that out over 100,000 years. no one would give a damn.
Yeah. Well, people would give a damn at least a little bit, but it
Oh,
would
people
certainly
would
be.
give a lot less of a damn than if he were to
Yeah.
kill one every single day for that 1,000 times in a row. In fact, that scenario, that event would be legendary, which is why we know him to this day. But if you had a
Mhm.
serial killer that took, 30 years between killings, it would be another story on the news, and people are like, oh, well, that sucks. Now back to my Pokemon.
Yep.
Now let's compare the Christian God to Hitler.
Oh, goodness. Here we
Oh,
go,
that's another
guys.
rabbit hole.
Here we go.
Here we go. Here we go.
We've gone to the religious diving board of the deep end.
Yes.
Oh, and there's an interesting there's an interesting thought to be brought up for the Christians who are against abortion. If you
Mhm.
believe in an eternal afterlife, including hell, eternal torment forever, then with abortions or at least baby killing, maybe even later than abortions, baby killing, when you think about it, you're guaranteeing that they go to heaven as opposed to being corrupted on earth. I mean, what's an infinity, an eternity
Mhm.
compared to the human lifetime on earth? It's an interesting
Mhm.
problem when you
Right.
want to consider from that worldview.
Here's what's interesting. When you actually think about it, most Christians believe if you don't actually inform people, if they don't know about Christ when they die, then they have an excuse and they can go to heaven.
Right.
But yet most Christians love to tell people about Christ. And
Mhm.
at that point in my mind, I'm like, so you want people to go to hell if they don't accept what you're saying. Whereas if you hadn't said anything and you destroy all books of Christianity, everyone would go to heaven.
Let's also remember the presuppositional standpoint that everyone already knows, including that baby that only knows how to cry and poop.
The
But
one that
except,
doesn't even
except for the
understand
fact
I
that,
just like
baking,
to
it
point
just
out one thing,
how
which
to
is
like instinctually react to suckle for milk or what have you.
I would just
except
like
for
to
the
point one
fact
thing
that
out.
all children are atheists, all babies are atheists. They have
Not in
no
the same
belief.
way that adult atheists are, of course. They have no concept, whereas we understand the concept and reject it. At least understand it to a certain degree.
Not
You want to get into the whole-
necessarily. They're
Well, not everyone. I'm not saying that everyone
It goes
does.
by it's go by the semantics. I get what both are saying. Essentially, one is like I actively identify as an atheist, and the other one is I don't actively identify as an atheist because I don't know how to identify at all. All I know how to do is cry and poop. Feed me.
Pretty much. It's a different kind of thing. It's not quite the same thing.
I mean, it's really a semantics game, and it's all based upon what you actually mean.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I mean, if
to
it's
def- to
anything
defend-
if it's a person who lacks belief in any gods, then that would include babies. But of course, the babies who don't believe are different from the people like us or not you, Christian, or are anarchist. It would be different from us since we recognize the concept but reject it because of XYZ reasons.
Well, they still say that babies are immoral, and by they I mean the backwater people on the Bible Thumping Wingnut show. They actively state that oh, when we're born, we cry out for milk and we cry for attention and pampering because they're babies. I mean, what else do you expect them to do? They're small-bodied humans with a head too big for its body. I mean, they can't do anything themselves.
Yeah,
Of course
they have
they
to
need.
they basically have to be genetically programmed before they can learn anything to react in certain ways. Like I was saying, instinctually suckle or for milk. I don't even know if suckling is the right word, but you know what I mean.
Technically, yes.
Because they.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So they instinctually suckle for milk because they need to, from the beginning, need to be able to feed. So yeah.
Yeah. So the thing.
Babies,
the thing is,
MMA artist, babies aren't parasites because technically they're living outside of the host. If you want to be technical, then the fetuses are what's in a sort of parasitic stage of their life or whatever. Since
all right,
they're
very
living inside
loosely
the host.
define parasite. But the thing is that given what Bible Thumping Wingnut thinks, or given what the crew on that show thinks, that babies are inherently evil, selfish, whatever. It's like, oh, those selfish babies. Do you think that given his logic, again, looking from his point of view, not necessarily your own opinion on this, but given his point of view, wouldn't babies, if they were to die, go to hell?
Well, according to Matt Slick, his baby became a porn star.
I want to make a comment on this
Oh,
before we
shoot.
start diving down that road.
Yeah, we've been talking for a while. He should definitely respond. It's so many people stacked up against him.
Well, It's also to the point on this being a religious question, and I struggled with this particular topic. This dives into what the doctrine is that we call original sin. And,
Which I find it a moral concept, but go ahead.
well, it depends on how you approach it, because there are some people that take it in a different way, in a different light, especially with me.
Original sin and this idea that it
Skylar,
transfers.
Skylar, do me a favor. Shut up. Go ahead,
Skylar?
Anarchist. Finish your thought.
Skylar?
Wait, isn't... Okay, you know what?
Are you talking to me? Oh, I'll have to shut up.
Alright, so here's it. So the main thing that they're going to go to about this, I believe, is Psalms 51, verse 5, where David's talking about from he was born a sinner and in sin did his mom conceive him. This is a classic verse that is usually gone to. I much prefer it the way that the Orthodox Jewish Bible reads it, because we get at least more of the Jewish context, and plus the Jewish phrase that is used that provides the Jewish saying that is in there, which in its literal Hebrew means from I was a sinner since birth or something like that, or since conception. I forget exactly which the phraseology they use. Now, does this mean that they go to hell when they pass? Because this is the dilemma that normally gets mentioned. If it's true and they're sinners, and that means they'd go to hell when they die, because sinners go to hell. Well, not necessarily, because from what I seen, there was a interesting video from someone named Tecton TV, and the video was called "Hell No, Baby," and
I hate that guy.
well, there are some things you can hate about him, but there's some things that I think that I've managed to find.
I find nothing appealing about that guy.
I don't know. So,
I'm not familiar with this name.
Imagine this. Imagine this. A guy that makes cartoons that apparently thinks he's all that.
That
And,
kind of sounds like
and
Dark Matter
his
25.
arrogance is projected through the cartoons.
yeah, he is a bit arrogant. I will admit that.
Just a bit. Come on.
Okay, what's the
you know
name? What was
Lie.
this guy again that you're talking about? What was his name?
Tecton TV.
Tecton TV. The description, if you're looking at it from a Christian point of view, sounds like Dark Matter 2525. What do you think
Yeah,
about it?
it's sort of, but
I like that guy. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, but anyways,
Yeah, I
as
like
I
Dark
was saying,
Matter's videos.
as I was saying,
Continue.
in the video, he points out that their babies don't go to hell, but at the same time they don't go to heaven, because in the sense they haven't done necessarily anything that
Purgatory.
much. Well, I don't even think it was purgatory that he was
Limbo.
suggesting. I don't know what exactly it was that he suggested. He said,
Well, if it's not
Oh.
purgatory and it's not limbo, what the hell is it?
I don't know. All he said was it's some kind of
It's Purgabo. It's limbatory. It's something.
They
it's
they
some
go
kind of,
to some magical realm that represents Michael Jackson's house for some reason.
it's some kind of third state that I'll try to look it up if I can.
It's a very weird concept. It honestly sounds a little unnecessary to me.
Hey, CA, I saw a video that you were in. Well, actually, I didn't watch it, but basically it was, I think it was you and Preet, and it was like a debate about
Yeah, it was the original sin debate.
Were you the, so do you subscribe to original sin, or are you against that teaching?
Yeah, I subscribed to it. I was defending it in that debate where I remember Scott Geertine was the moderator for it.
Yeah, because I think it comes down to definitions, how you're choosing to define that phrase, but how it's traditionally known and kind of where the phrase original sin came from. I would be one of those believers who would be of the opinion that I don't think it's scriptural, but I was just wondering on your stance. Thanks.
Well, my stance is that I think it would depend on how we understand the concept of original
Could I
sin.
jump in with how I understand the concept, and then we can see what your thing about it is, or?
I'm scared, but go ahead.
Okay, so when I hear about original sin, what I understand it to be is the original sinful act, at least according to biblical morality and so on and so forth, of Adam and Eve disobeying God, eating the fruit, and then all of the sins that people commit henceforth, that is transferred from the mother and father to the child, and so on and so forth. It's like a gene almost. It's passed on. Yeah.
Passed on from it kind of follows the okay, this is going to be an extreme example, but it works, so don't hate me. Well, you probably will, but oh well. In North Korea, what they
Okay.
do is that if a person does something that warrants execution, they not only punish the person who did it, they also punish the immediate family by the mere fact that they are related to them.
Yeah, that so basically anything like that is when people are talking about original sin is basically what I entirely object to, because of course I don't believe that the things that you do somehow matters to the child or the other family members who have no involvement in it. I believe
Well,
that
you
people
don't
who
know that
actually
if
do
you were in
things.
that situation, that you wouldn't eat that apple. And I go, well, I know I wouldn't eat that apple. Well, how do you know it? Because I think apples taste like crap.
Well, it didn't even say it
Well,
was an apple, but
well,
whatever.
Yeah,
if
Whatever
technically
it
it wasn't.
was.
if Adam and Eve were Asian, they would have eaten the snake instead of the apple.
I knew you were gonna go with that
Oh my
one.
god, I
Brutal.
love Alexia
Oh,
so
Brutal.
that was a good one.
much. Oh, jeez.
You've been waiting to use that one, haven't you, Alexia?
Actually, no.
Well, now I'm going to
Considering
steal
the
it from
whole
you.
fact that the Christian mythology, the whole origin story of Adam and Eve is an impossibility.
Oh yeah, that is another interesting point. Is basically how pretty much all of Genesis is a complete contradiction with all of known science.
Well, not only is it a contradiction with known science, it is also every single Christian story, the big ones, Noah's Ark, Genesis, etc. Or Moses splitting of the sea. They all have to change reality in order for them to work.
Right. In other words, they have to do magic for it to
I'm gonna
work.
see if I'm gonna see if I can get what's his name, General Han Solo in here.
No.
What?
If you get General Han Solo in here, I swear every time he talks, I'm making the Chewbacca sound because I'm sad of his death.
Spoilers.
I wouldn't even say that's spoilers at this point. I mean, that's sort of already known now.
Yeah. Anyway, so I agree that it would have to kind of bend reality to kind of make the whole stories like for example the arc work, because there's this thing called science and it kind of disproves that.
Well,
The
that
boat-
would depend. Well,
boat
that would
being
depend.
made out
That
of
would
wood
depend.
couldn't be big enough to hold all of those animals. They wouldn't have anywhere to poop or to pee. They would have nothing to eat, especially after the flood was over. There'd be no plant life for the herbivores. Pretty much all the fish life would die because you're mixing salt and fresh water and
There
all
was
of this.
Well,
Have
that
you
would,
seen
hold on,
Dark
hold on,
Matter?
hold on. Let me cut in here. That would
Okay.
also depend on how you view the flood. For example, you have some people that think it was a global flood. You have some people like myself, reasons to believe, Hugh Ross, General Han Solo, that take to the view that it was a local flood. It wasn't an entire global phenomenon. It was only over a certain geographical content or rain or
And
land.
it was interpreted, and so it's basically the Bible isn't perfect because people are flawed. Kind
Two
Well,
of
this
thing.
is
things.
when you read the
One,
Bible in its original
people
Hebrew
wrote it.
and Greek.
If you can interpret the story as either a global flood, which is what the story actually says, or a local flood, that means the Bible is not inerrant. But two,
This is where okay.
if the Adam and Eve story were true, and Adam and Eve had decided not to eat the apple, because according to the Christian mythos, death entered the world through sin, through Eve and Adam eating the apple. That means they would have been screwing and popping out black babies, Chinese babies, white babies, all over, until the entire world was covered with babies.
Yeah, that was in one of Dark Matter's
Yeah, I was
cartoons.
just about to say that. I mean,
It's like a
was coming from
layer of
somewhere.
different animals and people.
Oh,
Which is
wow.
why when it comes to the concept of death, I don't think it's talking about physical death. The Bible doesn't use. I mentioned this to Cliff Jumper, and even he admits that the Hebrew word that's being used for death isn't talking about physical death. It's the Hebrew word that's being used is for a means of separation from God. Then that's how the word was used.
So then, if the translation,
and also just real quick, the whole thing about the flood and flooding the entire earth and stuff like that. I mean, the Middle Eastern people like thousands of years ago thought that the earth was just a region that they happened to have lived in at the time. So I
the
guess
tallest mountains would have been the tallest mountains in their area rather than Mount Everest.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's trying to look at how it's written in their eyes and how they understand it in their culture and how it's written in their
Sure.
time.
So then, if the translation is more accurate, that it's a spiritual death, and this is because of the original Hebrew words used, as opposed to just being stuff that people made up, but is actually part of the translation, then I guess God didn't lie when he said that the day you ate the fruit you would die. He meant something different, so it's not a contradiction.
Some things they've kept in there.
This whole
the English
issue,
translations are fine. I mean, to claim that, oh, you have to go back to the Hebrew and the Greek, you're basically saying that the English translators did a really bad job. I mean,
yeah, and especially if you can't use especially if there are no footnotes for the words used, because not everything will translate equally well, especially if you have to add a ton of words to explain a concept that doesn't really exist in our language.
Well, here's something to consider too about the that death that it's talking about, because when God tells Adam and Eve, right, he says, in the day that you'll eat of it, you'll surely die or whatnot. They probably had no conception of death. They might not have even known what this word die meant. And so in light of that, they thought, okay. And then obviously when they partook of it, whatever happened after that defined what that word death meant. And I think the problem is that instead of approaching it that way, a lot of people take our modern definitions of death and read that into the text rather than getting our definition from the text itself.
Okay.
I think the text is pretty clear. Where in verse 19, for example, it says, "You are dust, and dust you shall return." I mean, isn't that talking about physical death? What else could it mean?
Okay, two things. First, I want to play this Wolfgang. You there?
Mm-hmm.
This is purposely for you, okay?
All right.
He's black. Come on. He's bald. Does he look like a bitch?
Is this gonna give me a? Is this gonna give me a strike?
Beautiful.
I want to kind of.
Hold on.
Okay.
It's 40 seconds long.
40 seconds? Jeez.
I got a question though. Is this gonna get copyright?
Probably will.
I'm pretty sure it's under fair use as long as we comment on it.
Okay,
Well,
anyways.
It's
okay,
a very
it sucks.
funny and insightful clip. I really love the audio quality in there.
Yeah,
Are you kidding me? It was terrible.
We should all know the fucking same.
I'm
you
sorry.
gotta love-
I have a 60-inch TV. I sit 15 feet from it.
I think
I
the
mean,
comment doesn't have one.
thank you for the attempt, Alexium. I mean, I do love Samuel Jackson. But speaking of which, speaking of well-spoken black actors, isn't Morgan Freeman doing something on religion tonight?
He is.
Oh, yes.
It's hard to argue with a smart person. It's impossible to argue with a stupid person.
Wait, okay, now I'm confused. We were talking about Adam and Eve, and then the death, then now we're talking about Morgan Freeman on religion.
Hey, well, Morgan Freeman is God. Okay, he played
Morgan
God
Freeman is
Oh
God.
yeah, he did play God.
He did play
Yeah.
God.
He did a damn good job of playing God.
Although
Yeah,
That's because he doesn't need to act.
Although
all he
of course,
does,
that
all he has
movie
to do is
didn't.
talk.
All that movie, we're talking about Bruce Almighty, I assume. It didn't, of course, resolve any of the moral issues of the fact that, Bruce still lived a crappy life, or at least had a lot of issues, and then all that happened was God is just like a sassy asshole, and it's just like, here, I'll give you my powers. You do it! It doesn't really change the fact that God could have still done a better job. And I want to make a quick point, really quick, and then I'll shut the hell up. As another quick point is the fact that you have to put so much effort into interpretations and translations really seems to show that God really doesn't give a fuck about trying very hard to make sure his message is clear. I mean, why the hell isn't there a Bible frickin', I don't know, how many translations are there? Let's say 500.0 made from God himself, handed down to every human being, as opposed to all this crap.
Well,
I could make a Bible.
the translation, hold on, I want to get this point out, because this is the thing that I always hear from King James Onlyist. The translation is not what's inspired or divine. That's a thing that's people that they just are translating it into their own
I'm
language.
I'm not saying that the translations are divine. I'm just making the
Right.
point that the fact that they have to be translated at all, and the fact that they are so full of errors, and the fact that there have been religious councils in which they removed stories, and they sit defining, hey, which translation or interpretation or whatever are we going to go with. The fact that you have so much error in understanding the Bible, I would think, is a sign that the God is either kind of a dick or is not omnipotent.
Well, let me suggest something. Let me suggest something. Is for example, if one of the, for example, if someone in, let's say, Germany had the cure for cancer, there was a group of scientists. They wrote the formula down, and they've sent it to us. Now we've got to translate that into English for some of the other doctors in the future to also get that.
Gonna have to go, guys. See ya.
All right,
See you, Red.
Red. But I mean, translations exist to relay a message to different people of different languages and culture. That's the whole point. I mean,
Science uses one language. There's no translation.
We're talking about the recipe for something. We're even just messages.
Exactly. There's no translation. There is
Well,
one thing.
the chemical formula itself doesn't need to be translated because there's kind of a universal understanding in
The
science. But maybe,
language
for example, the steps to create that formula, that compound, whatever, that might need to be translated.
Because like I've had to sift through fucking German research papers. I mean, it does happen. So I mean, you do need to. Most of the time they will have it translated through the bat, but it can happen.
But if I say the words "God damn it," is that blaspheming God?
No.
Does God actually understand English?
I don't say it's blasphemy against God. I still say it's a bad thing, but I mean, I don't say it's blasphemy against God or the Holy Spirit or anything.
Just the utterance, just the cuss word or the intended use. Like, I stub my toe and I say, son of a bitch. If I say, God damn it, when I stub my toe, that's not blasphemy. But if I say, fuck you, God, is that blasphemy?
The whole thing is not blasphemy or not. It's about taking the name in vain or.
Oh, right.
That's the thing that we have to keep a good track on what it means. Blasphemy against God, or is it taking the name in vain? In other words, taking it lightly, which God, damn, hell, and Jesus. Taking any of those for words that are found in the Bible that are having a serious context and connotation, taking them out and just using them lightly as if you're drinking, kind of attitude. That's what they would consider light in vain. I know, Alexia.
Okay, so just circle back onto a previous point because I don't think this was fully addressed. The thing is, though, with the whole German thing, we're talking about people who have to communicate with each other, whereas what you believe in is an almighty God. I mean, even if you wanted God to sort of be there in the beginning and then sort of leave, that is, become really active at first and then not so active in our lives, if he was omnipotent, he still could just make it, okay, humans are not so flawed that they are incapable of translating my words correctly. Done. So, I mean, it's again, when you have an omnipotent being, there really can't be such a thing as a problem. I mean, because unless you're going to take up the stance that God can do anything minus things that are logically impossible, like creating a rock so heavy that he can't lift, that sort of thing. I mean, even then, you could still do lots of other logically possible things, like making humans, because when he's omniscient, he knows the future, so he can at least create humans in the beginning, such that they don't create such a flawed interpretation of the Bible and that there's only one belief. I mean, there's no reason he even needs to come down to make a Bible 500.0. He would only need to make one in the beginning, considering he's omnipotent, supposedly, anyway.
Here's the thing. He did.
Then we have redactions as well, human redactions.
Well, let me make some comment here. I mean, they did made one Bible. One was in the Hebrew for the Old Testament. It was considered there Hebrew. That's it, finished.
And Aramaic.
Yeah, and then later on, the translations were made for Aramaic.
Well, no, there actually was original Aramaic in a few of the books.
Okay, well, I did not know that.
Yeah, like Daniel, Book of Daniel.
Okay, yeah, so, I mean, you have things like Daniel being in Aramaic, but a good chunk of it was written in Hebrew, at least in its original. And then, of course, you have the evolution of the language from the original deal to the Masoretic text, which is what we have now. Then you have the Septuagint, which is the Greek Bible. If you read the Church Father writings or look at the New Testament when they quote the Old Testament, they never quote from the Hebrew Old Testament. They always quote words that in direct English are translated from the Septuagint. So the apostles and the Church Fathers used the Greek Septuagint. And I forget what the other language is that was used for the translation of the uh, Greek of the Old Testament. But the point is that certain languages are going to mean certain things and say certain things when it comes into a literal rendering of its text, and that's the main point where linguistics and translation comes in towards these things. And then you have the New Testament with it being written in Greek, and now we got all these resources and manuscripts that we're looking at. Now we're trying to translate it based on what the text has said through that time.
And based on our understandings of previously fairly dead languages. But this doesn't really
Yeah, these are
resolve the
all
issue that I was
human
talking
problems,
about.
aren't they? These are all human problems.
Right, and when you have an omnipotent God, you can just have one who snaps his fingers and says humans are not so flawed that they will have these problems in the first place. Leave everything else about humans intact, except for them having... Leave everything else intact except for their flaws in trying to communicate his supposedly divinely inspired, very important message.
Okay, 3 things. I want to jump in.
Okay, and then Sean goes up next because he's going to
The
be holding
first
his hand
thing
up.
is my normal self just joking. Anase,
Yes.
if your mom calls you a son of a bitch, who is that really an insult to?
I guess my mom.
Okay, 2, Christian anarchist. You never actually answered my question when I asked before we went on live.
Mm-hmm.
What has the devil actually done that's evil?
I'm gonna AFK for just a second.
Alright, and I'll answer that since what Sean's going to suggest answer probably would be more direct to Nase's deal. So when it comes to what the devil has done that would be considered evil, there would be the I'm already going to say this even though earlier it was also stated we can't go with this premise, but would be well, then again, I don't know if it was necessarily Satan in the Garden of Eden.
It wasn't.
Alright, so then we have what happened in Job, for example, the things that Satan
Which
did.
was
back.
done with God's blessing. Satan went to God and said,
Mhm.
"You have this follower. I don't think he's going to follow you. Let's do these amazingly terrible things to them
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and see if they still follow you." And
Mhm.
God condoned it. So technically, that's not
Permitted it.
evil. If a police officer says it's okay for you to take that person's computer, it's not necessarily evil for you to take that person's
Mhm.
computer.
Well, that's only if we're taking morality as something that comes from authority. It's not so much
Well,
evil as much as it
according
is
to-
naive. You thought it was okay because he said so. It's not evil in the same
According
way.
to the Christian mythos, God is good. If God
Right.
says something, it is good.
Oh yeah,
God
which
says
makes
you
an
can
interesting
do this,
dilemma.
It
Well,
is
it wasn't.
good. So
It wasn't him saying that it was good. It was the matter of him saying that he's permitting the.
that means it's good.
And God allowing it means that he's permitting evil instead of achieving whatever goal he wanted to achieve out doing such evil. Because like,
Let's see.
omnipotent, if he wanted to teach a lesson to Job, he wouldn't have to commit evil to do it if he was omnipotent and perfectly good. There's a contradiction in the story. Again, when you have these perfect qualities, you can't ever have an imperfect.
Hey. He was doing stuff long before you guys were born, so he could do stuff, okay?
I don't
That's
need
what
your
it
advice.
is.
Alright, so
So
I
what
really
I
want
was
to make sure
saying
that we
is,
get more of the. We really want to get the other parts of this question, especially with Sean's deal set up. But I will talk to you about this, Alexia. But what's your third question that you said you had? This.
honestly, I had it in my mind, but I can't think of it right now.
Oh, my bad.
It was to come along the lines of you answering the question or not answering the question. I mean, not to say that I'm attacking you, but no Christian has ever been able to answer this question to a reasonable extent.
Right, and I think this is where it would take a long time for me to get to it, and that's why I want to spare the misery of everybody in this hangout, and at least let them have a chance to breathe and speak, especially Sean, who I don't know if he even has his hand still up, because he tends to hold his hand up for a whole hour.
I'll say one last thing, and then I'll let them talk.
Okay.
Your profile picture would look a lot less feminine if you didn't have shaved eyebrows.
Good point.
Hmm.
I'll keep that in mind.
Hey, my
For
character's eyebrows are pretty thin.
yeah,
But
because
your
So,
of
yeah.
cheating. So
What,
your sexuality isn't in question.
wait,
Okay,
what?
then.
I'm
Wait,
a
what?
raptor. I don't have eyebrows.
Wait, my sexuality is in question?
You're
So
a
Remember,
Japanese male that looks like a female, no matter what picture. You could make your hair as long as Jesus's, and you would still look like a chick. I mean, I know that you're male. I know that you don't roll that way,
Mhm.
but your picture it just screams I'm metrosexual.
But, well, if
and
the,
so
funny thing
earlier I
about that.
heard a.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no. Earlier, Anase, if I'm saying your name correctly,
It's
you were
a
talking
Nase,
about
real quick. It's a Nase, just so you
Nase.
know.
All right, cool.
Okay, it's
But
all right.
yeah, when you were talking about translations being understandable, I believe, and things like that, one thing that some people aren't aware of is the fact that it's not God's desire that all people necessarily understand His words. I mean, you can see instances where Jesus specifically put things out there so that people would not understand. And to me, I think it's very interesting because a lot of times you have people that, oh, we don't understand Scripture, or, oh, there's all these contradictions in the Bible, and yet when you ask the believer, they don't see any contradictions, and the Bible's completely understandable to me. And to me, that's just kind of evidence of the fact that it's exactly what God said He was going to do. He would make it understandable to some and not understandable to others. So, if you don't understand things and you're not a believer, don't be surprised. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
So all
but
believers understand the Bible?
they certainly seem to understand things
That's a
differently.
preacher Sean. So preacher Sean, all believers understand the Bible.
Well, this is I'm trying to understand what Anasi was getting at because earlier, as far as like what his original topic was about Scripture, because I think what he was trying to say
I
is
can
that
re-summarize my point if you would like
Yeah,
me
so
to.
you're saying believers have a well versed knowledge in the Bible and they understand Scripture quite well. They're not confused. They have no
well
need to go to Bible study.
let's let Anasi say what he was going to say to clear
Okay,
it up.
so the summarization of my point is that if the end goal is to have people believe, because God doesn't want people burning in hell and so on and so forth, if the end goal is to do that, then I don't see any reason why a perfectly good, omnipotent, and omniscient being would ever have a Bible, or rather have people who would have to interpret and reinterpret and translate and so on and so forth this Bible. If the end goal is to have people to understand it, there is no reason for these events to transpire the way they have, given God's supposed abilities, and so on and so forth.
Okay, that might be a little bit different than what I was commenting on. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's sort of like if you're a master craftsman, there is no reason why you need to be building the chair this crappily. Just build the chair straightforward.
Yeah,
In a way.
I think the problem is that we have an assumption of what God is trying to build, and maybe our assumption is not accurate with what He's actually trying to do.
I can go ahead and kind of grant that there might be some other purpose that this God is trying to achieve, but of course it sort of goes back to the thing. Okay, so a lot of Christians, believe I'm going to go to hell for not believing. I don't know if any of you guys are one of them, but if that's the case, and this God doesn't want me to go to hell, as they say, as they'll often tell me, then there should be no, once again, omnipotent God, omniscient, so on and so forth. There's no reason for me to not be a believer. God would know exactly what He needs to do in order to convince me that He exists if He doesn't want me to go to hell. So either God wants me to go to hell, or He just likes doing things in a roundabout way just because He's kind of a dick. There's more possibilities here, but it's problems that arise when you have different people with different beliefs, and so it's a sort of unique challenges with each belief and definitions of God proposed. Because I mean, some gods I would say are definitely impossible and logically contradictory, like the presuppositionalist gods. Red had a video I saw recently when I was going through sorry, when I was going through his channel, he had a video. He was talking to a presuppositionalist who was telling him that this God doesn't lie, and he's saying that God told him that everyone knows that God exists, and since Red doesn't know that God exists, this God supposedly doesn't lie, then this God by definition doesn't exist. And so this is kind of the thing. It sort of depends on the beliefs proposed, and so it's kind of hard to have these conversations because you have to have different. You sort of have to start out with, okay, what do you believe? Because you kind of jump bandwagons. You can get some generalities there, but there will always be counter arguments that are because, oh, wait, I don't quite believe this, so your argument doesn't work. It's an interesting thing because lots of people believe lots of different things. And now I'm going to shut up because I've been rambling for a while, and you guys would probably like to respond.
I have to wonder why we give time of our day to entertain ideas that are absolutely crazy.
Or at least ones that have no evidence for them anyway.
I mean, if there was a person coming to a college screaming at people saying that the fairy godmother will condemn you to eternal torture because you're a slut, you're a cunt, you're dressed like a whore, you would think that they're crazy. And they would be driven off campus. They would be driven away. They wouldn't be given precedence in politics or anything else.
But yeah, we do the same thing.
Because somebody comes along and says, oh, I believe in this mainstream religion, like Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Muslim, Judaism.
Islam. You said Muslim.
They're given preference that their ideas might actually be true. Even
in the case of
in
America,
2,000 plus years, they have not yet proven such insane ideas could possibly be true. But
not to mention that we live in a country where if you don't believe these things, you're somehow treated as if you're an idiot, you're arrogant, you're a fool, you're a bad person. It's ridiculous that people live in the U.S. that is live like that. That is to say, at least currently, an open atheist is not going to get major office positions in politics.
Yeah, the least favorite fucking demographic out of all sorts, even pedophiles and shit. It's like, are you fucking kidding me?
I find that greatly insulting in a way.
You should be.
I find it intellectually insulting.
Oh.
It doesn't rile me up emotionally too much
and
I haven't dealt with these people too much. I haven't dealt with
politics, into law, their ideas of what morality and other things should be, such as abortion and other rights. Such as, I'll give you a good example. In Texas, there's a fetal pain law. Basically, if the fetus could possibly, in any sense, feel pain, it's up there, dude. If it could possibly, in any sense, feel pain, you cannot induce labor. Even if the fetus is born, it has no brain, but it's past the point where it feels pain, you cannot induce labor because it would be considered an abortion. It would be illegal if it's past a certain point.
There's an image about this. The thing that I shared, which I said earlier, I shared an image to this group so we could argue about abortion and stuff. Here's what the image says. 12 states have outlawed abortion after 20 weeks because the fetus might feel pain, in air quotes. Meanwhile, in all 50 states, it is permissible to perform a circumcision on a newborn male without anesthesia because doctors remain divided over whether infants can feel pain. I thought that was interesting, and that's why I shared it. And when I shared it, of course, I said, so y'all want to have a bitch fight about circumcision and or abortion? Into the Facebook group that I was in. And I got a bit of an
I am personally against all circumcisions. There is no point where a parent should have a right to choose that a piece of a child's body is cut off. The child should have a right to its own body.
It can have medical.
There is no medical benefit to circumcision.
I think there are situations in which there's something about the penis that's screwed up. Whatever, circumcision is a healthy option.
There's not any case where circumcision should be required.
Yeah, I'm
It's
uncertain. I'm
not
uncertain.
proven
It
I
can.
have
medically
no reason.
I'll go ahead.
beneficial.
I'll go ahead and grant that for the sake of argument. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
actually true. If there are any circumstances in which, sorry, God, I don't know if there are any circumstances in which circumcision is like medically necessary. So, for the sake of argument, I'll just say no and throw out the thought that while I agree that it shouldn't happen, I don't treat it like it's a big deal. I mean, there are more
Yeah.
important things than something you're not going to
No,
remember.
no, this is very important to somebody like myself who's transgendered. It's a very important thing.
I didn't know you were transgender.
I know you don't because you don't know me. We've never met before. But
So should I refer to you as a
but
girl?
if I would appreciate it, or just Alex, is fine.
All
I
right,
don't
I'll
have
do
to
that
figure
in
that
the
out.
future.
But what I'm saying is, a parent should never have a right to choose when to cut off a piece of a child's body. You, as an 18, or let's say a 17-year-old, you're not above the age of maturity. Do you think your parents should have a right to force you to have a circumcision at the age of 17?
Definitely not.
Exactly. So they should not have a right when you are a baby.
Well,
Circumcision
okay,
should be
hang on.
illegal.
Hang on,
Is
hang on.
mutilation.
Again, it does have some.
It doesn't matter. It is not their choice. It is not their body.
Oh my god! Just
Hey,
hate
can I make a
liberal
few
talk.
quick points here?
I'm sorry. I'm very passionate about this particular subject.
And I agree with you, but it's more like a few steps off, sort of where some of the nitpicks and the details I don't quite agree with. And I think we could have a maybe short, interesting conversation about. I don't think that it's a big deal because let me give you an example here. I don't think that abortion is a big deal, at least in the early stages, because like I was saying, it's basically just a developing multicellular organism. There's nothing about the fetus in the early stages that makes it a person other than like the potential to become a person and the unique human genome that it has. It's that stuff. I don't think it's a big deal to abort it because, the woman's rights and so on and so forth, but also because it's not to me it's not that large of a difference between this unthinking developing human and just preventing it from existing at all, whereas in the same line of reasoning you have a baby which won't even remember I was circumcised and I don't remember being circumcised or feeling any pain or whatever and what have you. But whereas when I'm 17, I'm 16 right now by the way, if I was 17 and if I wasn't circumcised until that point, I would definitely remember it, and it would definitely have an effect. It is my bodily autonomy. I should have the right to make this decision on my own, but I'm not going to pretend that the circumstances are exactly the same, because there is a bigger difference here, and it's the fact that I won't even remember it, and apparently it's disputed whether or not I'm even going to feel a whole lot of pain in the first place.
So are
And
you
also,
against female circumcision?
also, you get more medical complications if you have circumcision at a later date. This is well
Are
known.
you against
See,
female circumcision?
Huh?
Yeah, I guess. I don't really know too much about that. I don't even know if that's...
Many people don't. Here, I'll
Yeah.
explain it to everyone who doesn't.
Okay,
Female
sure.
circumcision is where they cut the clitoris out.
Okay.
They also cut away most of the external female genitalia and sew it up so that the female cannot experience sexual pleasure while having sex.
Well, there's two
All they
different
are good
functions to
for-
that then.
All they are good for at that point is making babies.
But there's differences though. You can't compare the two. One is removing the foreskin. It's not removing the head of the penis.
You do realize
Whereas
there are nerves in the foreskin that is cut away that increases sexual pleasure.
I'm a
There's
horny
no-
bastard. If only I had grown up
the-
with my foreskin, then I could have better pleasure when
Dude,
masturbating.
That's not established in biology
Dude, you're missing
whatsoever.
out. You are
Hold
missing
on.
out, seriously.
The foreskin does not provide any extra pleasure. It's all the
It actually
sensitivity
does.
goes to the head. Your foreskin will have nerve endings because it's skin, of course, but it doesn't. When you're having circumcision, it's not to prevent fucking stimulation, to prevent an orgasm like
No.
the
Hang on a
woman's
second,
is
guys.
that you're
It's
claiming to.
solely based on religion. There
But
is
it does
no
have some medical benefit.
name one.
Very limited, but some. It helps. It can help reduce the possibility of, say, STD transmission because that's to do with the skin
Em-
epidermal layer and
em-
how its makeup is, and it's easy for transmission through the skin. This is well established.
MMRs, we agree on a lot of things. We get along most of the time. Would you
Mm.
not agree?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what I'm saying is, because I'm very passionate about this, because it was forced upon me. I was not given a choice when I was a child. Is there any relevant medical science that proves that circumcision is actually beneficial and is needed?
Not needed, but it does have some very limited um, advantage. Nothing drastic or massive, but yes, it does help lower STD infection rates. Very limited, but it can help, and that has to do with the epidermal layer within that skin section. It's
It
very
has
easy to transmit STDs from there.
it has nothing to do with STD transmission. If you
It
stick a
actually
penis
does.
inside of a
This is
vagina,
my area. When we're talking about biomedical stuff, medicine, anything to do with biology and STDs and so forth, this is my area. I
okay,
do infectious diseases.
I'm willing to accept what you're saying because I understand you're a reasonable, intelligent person. Could you please, for my benefit, because this is one area that I'm very, very passionate about, could you please provide a link so I could read and research what you're saying?
You can probably just Google Scholar circumcision health
I
benefits.
understand that. I would like to
Yeah.
read and understand what MM is actually saying and where he is coming from. Because, like I said, this is one area that I'm very passionate about.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
not
pretty
nothing drastic, but it does somewhat. But it's nothing drastic, of course. It won't.
Can I jump in here
Yeah.
for a second?
Go
Yeah,
Because
go
for it.
ahead.
I'm just wondering if it. I'm not denying that it has to do with STDs because I don't, know much about the medical side of this. But wouldn't it be better than to give the person the choice to get circumcised once they're at that age where they are having sex and they're in danger of getting STDs? Because babies aren't having
But the
sex.
thing
So
is, though, I see where you're coming from. But circumcision at later dates, things become more complicated. You can even bleed out. Um, the risk of infection goes up. A whole bunch of nasty stuff.
Do you
The
realize that
later you
they
put it
don't
off.
anesthetize babies or baby males when they cut off their foreskin?
Sorry?
All 50 states, it is not illegal to not anesthetize a baby male while you're cutting off the foreskin. You don't have to. It's not at all required. As
It
was said
depends on how the
earlier,
procedure is done. I'm not
they,
sure
they
about
say
how
that they
circumcision.
say that fetuses can feel pain, but when a baby male is born, an
Well,
anesthesia
it's
is
Texas
not
law.
required to cut off the tip of its dick.
Oh yeah, that's just Texas law. It's stupid. Oh man.
I pretty much agree with Alex on a lot of the details. Some more details I don't quite agree with. The real difference here is that I don't think it's as big of a deal, though I understand where Alex is coming from. So it's not like anything I need to really dispute over of, hey, you need to calm down. No, I'm pretty much fine here. So I think I might not be participating as much here, but those are my thoughts. You guys continue on from where you left off here when I interrupted.
Well, I just want to add my 2 cents in this. In the ancient Near East, circumcision was nothing but a ritual rite. There was no medical association. I mean, this thing was practiced among the Egyptians, Akkadians, also now, Abraham and the Jews. But later on, Herodotus actually theorized by why they did that. It was certain hygienic properties, especially in the locations that they were in. Certain dry climates and things like that. And now this became a big debate. If it's the same God between the Old and New Testaments, certain dry. if it's the same God between the Old and New Testaments, the debate was, okay, in the New Covenant, is there any relevance? Because obviously there is no ultimately major, health benefit or whatever, because Jews obviously understood it to be a ritual thing. So in the New Covenant, it actually became symbolized in baptism, and so that was like your circumcision, so to speak. So today, strictly speaking, it shouldn't be a compulsory thing. Maybe it could be done for maybe certain medical, forms of treatment. Like if you have to get it done, then you get it done. But it shouldn't be forced upon you from at birth, basically, because the New Testament is explicitly saying, "Don't do it." It was an ancient practice that is not necessary anymore. So yeah.
So, sorry, Alexia asked for reference. I will provide the studies, but this is just a general fact sheet from the CDC. It gives you the biological plausibility, and one section is about a systematic review and a meta-analysis which focused on male circumcision. This is back in 2000. It concluded that 19 cross-sectional studies, 5 case control studies, 3 cohorts, and 1 partner study that noted a substantial protective effect of male circumcision on risk of HIV infection was noted. So it does help. Nothing too drastic again, but it's somewhat noticeable. If I was when I become a parent, I may or may not. I'm not cut, and my fucking cock's going fine. So, it'll be up to my partner's choice. I don't really have a dog in the fight. So yeah, that's just my piece.
So in other words, if your partner cares a lot about about whether or not it is or isn't, you're just kind of gonna let the spouse, male or female, I don't know what your shtick is.
Female. Yeah.
Okay. So your wife, she's just gonna make the decision for you. If she has a strong opinion, then you'll just kind of let her do her thing and appease her.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, again, I would say to her, and I would consult at the same time with the doctors, and we'd both should be in agreement with each other, saying, hey, these are the benefits, versus, doing it at a young age, as soon as they pop out, versus, at a later stage when you can have more complications, so on and so forth, a more evidence-based kind of approach to it. But ultimately, I really wouldn't care. I mean, if I was cut, so be it, but I'm not. Yeah.
When you get a second, I'd like to actually go over what you actually just linked,
Really quick, if anyone has nothing else to add, I'd like to do 2 things. One, I would like to acknowledge that Josiah jumped in here. I believe I saw him have a conversation with Red on his channel. I can't remember which person it was.
Oh wow, the mic works, but I can't hear anything.
You can't hear anything? Oh, joy. Okay, so then while I guess we're waiting for him to fix his crap, the second thing I'd like to do is jump topics. Remember when I was saying how I, had conversation with people on abortion? I'd like to tell you something that happened some hours ago, 7-something hours ago, when I was having this conversation, is that when I was trying to justify my stance, I was hi. Can you hear us?
Oh.
Okay, so when I was trying to justify my stance, I was trying to explain how a lot of my position is about bodily autonomy and rights and so on and so forth. And so I made an analogy that a fetus does not have the right to use someone else's body against the person's will to sustain itself. In other words, it doesn't have the right to essentially be a parasite without the host's consent. I don't want to use the word parasite because it's loaded and it'll make people think, but I just mean it in the more technical sense. I'm not trying to carry any baggage with it. Just the technical sense of that it it lives inside the body of a host, and that it drains nutrients from it that the host will need to replenish, and so on and so forth. So I don't mean to say. Oh, by the way, bye, Sean. So I don't mean to say it in a negative way. I'm just trying to be technical here because it's very easy to explain. So in this sense, it does not have the right to be a parasite without the host's consent, in the same way that you cannot forcefully make me give someone an organ even though it's to save their life, because I have my own bodily autonomy. And I shit you not, they were either fucking with me or they were serious, and then they started fucking with me. I don't know why, but they kept saying that I was saying that a fetus is the same thing as a kidney. If you guys don't get how retarded that is, let me go ahead and explain what the actual analogy is. The fetus is the person in the hospital bed. The kidney is the person donating, or is the body, rather. Sorry, the kidney is the body, the mother's body. You have this thing, it's part of my body, that if, taken from me or used or whatever, you have to use my body in order to sustain something else's life. The fetus is the person in the hospital bed who needs an organ, and the mother's body is the kidney. It was frustrating and ridiculous. These people, I fucking argued with them for a while before someone, John Jones was his name, before he was actually making arguments here and was kind of contributing instead of shitposting, making jokes. It was frustrating arguing with people who don't understand how the fuck you refute an analogy, as opposed to just pointing out a difference. Because if it's an analogy, then there's going to be differences in the situations. A fetus isn't the exact same thing as a freaking adult male person, female, whatever, lying in a hospital bed. But if the situations were exactly the same, it wouldn't be an analogy, because then it's just the same situation twice. It was so frustrating. Thoughts, comments?
So, MM Artist, I don't know if he's done or not, but I've actually gone over the study that you linked, and I'd like to discuss it with you.
All right,
It
go
wasn't
ahead.
a study, it
My
was a
thing
general
was just
fact
venting
sheet.
some bullshit I had from earlier. Go ahead and do your thing, guys.
It wasn't a study. It's just like a general fact sheet of information from the CDC. If you want actual research papers, I can provide them for you. I don't think that one did provide any references. I'll just check.
It provided references, but I'd like to go over what you actually linked to me, if you have a
Yeah.
second.
Oh, I did, yeah.
Okay, according to the study, a vast majority of circumcisions do not occur, which we already, I'm sure, knew, due to the decreased possible risk of HIV and STD transmissions. They're mainly due to religious or other non-fact-based positions. I've actually gone over the entire study that you just linked to me, and it didn't actually link to any other studies that prove that it actually reduces.
Again, it's not a study. It's just a
I'm not
fact
saying
sheet.
it is.
It's, well, you said it's a study. It
I'm
does
going
provide
over
the references. Bottom. It provides references down the bottom. You see them. Provides.
Any so far.
It provides 68 references. But it gives you a section on biological plausibility, which does talk about the skin and its biology and the epidermis and so forth with that, and how it is very much more susceptible than anything else to HIV infection. And below that it talks about a meta and systematic review cohort study and so forth, which does show that it does substantially have a protective effect when you do circumcise. But what you just said before, that it's mostly due to religious reasons, yeah, fine, so be it. But again, it does somewhat have a protective effect.
Now let's look at the negative effect that it has.
Really quick, I want to edge in here real quick. So something I didn't know about how Google Hangout works is that people can be unbroadcasted. So for the people who may be watching this stream, a guy named Josiah who has argued with Red's Rhetoric
No,
in the
we're not
past
doing
was in the
Josiah.
stream.
Screw
It was in the
Josiah.
stream, and
You
he's
guys are my
unbroadcasted.
best friends. I
Ah,
love when you're
Jesus
talking about
Christ.
me.
That's fucking nuts.
Yeah,
So
Josiah,
he's
nobody
in,
can hear you.
yeah, so like I was saying, he's unbroadcasted. So to anyone watching, he joined a while ago. He hasn't really spoken, but he has like unmuted himself for a moment or whatever. He's unbroadcasted, so you guys apparently can't see that he's in here. And I just want to let you guys know that that was what happened earlier. He joined. I didn't know he was unbroadcasted, and you guys couldn't see. I have now explained the situation, and you guys may continue what you were saying.
That's a
Wait,
good.
what was the
wants to hear
situation?
that.
What happened?
The situation is that Christian anarchist stepped out, and he's still gone. And until he comes back, he can't. You can't be broadcasted because he's the only one with mind control.
Anyways, as I was saying,
Wait, what the heck happened to my microphone?
but if we look at the pros and cons, if we do with anything else, the cons far outweigh the pros.
Shut up, Josiah.
Decision.
Wait, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you, Josiah. We can hear you, Josiah.
Yeah.
But no one else watching the stream. That is the people who aren't in this hangout. None of those people can hear you. They don't. Unless if we never said anything, no one would know you were in the stream. So when Christian Anarchist gets back, we can deal with that, and you'll get added to the stream or something. And he would appear to be lit up. Did Christian Anarchist come back?
I guess so, unless someone else has mind control. Yeah, he's back.
Sorry for being gone for so long. I've had to eat, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave soon because I have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to work.
Oh, that's really unfortunate. I'm having a lot of fun on the stream. I like doing these hangouts. This is fun.
Well, how much? Hold on. We need to do the survey. Josiah, hold on a second. Mr. Anasi Omasi, how do you say your name, sir?
Anase.
Anase.
If you want to be a complete weeb, sort of try reading the vowels, sort
Anase.
of kind of Japanese. That'll give you a better idea. Like if
Kawaii
you
senpai.
On a 1 to 10, on a 1 out of 10, on a 1 out of 10, Mr. Anase, how would you say you've enjoyed your experience here on a Christian Anarchist hangout?
It hasn't been a perfect experience. I've been having some kind of chill fun here, so a bit above average, so maybe 6 or 7 out of 10, maybe.
All right, a 6 out of 10 will do just fine.
Don't answer that because that's not actually CA.
Yeah, I watched in on this hangout.
I actually know CA's voice.
What?
But as I said, Reason, who are you talking to in chat?
I was talking to Josiah because he was when he was unbroadcasted, he was talking and no one could hear him in the watching the stream. No one could hear him, and he was still talking, and it was like we were talking to a ghost.
Oh wow, really?
That is so funny.
Why do you sound like you're speaking through a sock to a phone in a closet in the bathroom?
The person who is speaking for Christian Anarchist, I don't actually believe that you are CA, because CA doesn't talk like that.
Oh, really? How so? What does he talk like?
Well, CA isn't that quite formal.
Oh my god.
What was that mental disorder where you believe that everyone has been replaced with an identical
I'm so
copy?
confused right now.
You know what? How about to end and kill everyone's confusion? We're just gonna end the hangout and everyone can just be on
No, I don't want the stream to end.
Josiah's talking through a baby monitor.
Alright, so till then, shalom alaikum.